Now there actually is another way to make a cyc wall like this without using footage layers and having 3 different sections like this, and that's by using an extruded shape layer. So I'm going to go back to my active camera and I'll show you how I would do this. To make it nice and perfect, I'm going to base it on rectangles. So I'm going to just start by double clicking on the rectangle tool without any layer selected, so it makes a rectangle shape layer. And I'm just going to resize it a little bit down. We can always adjust this later, but what I want to do is use the roundness property to round off the corners. Then I want to duplicate this rectangle path and add a merge paths set to subtract. And my fill disappears because both paths are in the exact same spot. But if I just shift the position off a little bit in the X and Y positions, so maybe 15 pixels off each side, then we get this thin line. I'm going to solo this layer so we're not distracted by everything else in our scene, but imagine we're looking at our studio cyc wall straight on from the left side. So this would be the floor and this would be the back wall. Okay, so this should work just as it is. If I make it a 3D layer, it disappears just because of the placement of our camera, but if I change to custom view 1, there it is. Okay, so our layer, and I'll go into the geometry options for it and increase the extrusion depth. Now you can kind of see what I'm talking about. It's drawing the profile of this 3D extruded shape. From here I can press R to bring up the rotation and just see that I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees so it's facing the right direction. And if I unsolo this now and just twirl around my camera, I can kind of line this up with the cyc wall I already had. So I'm just going to move this until the floor kind of matches up there, shift it over here, and then just push it forward a little bit until the back wall lines up, so somewhere about there. Now it's not quite as wide as I want it to be, and my extrusion is set to the max of 1000. If we go to the extrusion depth, that's as far as I can go, is 1000 pixels. But I can scale this layer on the Z-axis. So if I just press S to bring up the scale and unlink them, then I can grab the Z and make this as wide as I want. So I'm just going to make it nice and big and then pull it over here a little bit. And now that it's basically in place of where my cyc wall already was, I'm just going to grab that fill color by going into my solid setting options and copying that fill, and then applying that same color to the shape layer. I also need to make sure that I bring the material properties over, so I'm going to open that up, grab the material options, copy and paste, and now my cyc wall looks basically identical to what I had made up from my 3 solid layers. So let's switch back to our active camera, and here we are. Like I said, it basically looks identical, but we're doing it with 1 layer instead of 3. If I switch back to my custom view 1, we can also play around with the roundness. So if we wanted that transition to be smaller, I would just need to go into the contents, into each one of these rectangles, and change the roundness down. So actually I'm going to switch to my left view so I can see this straight on, and I can see the profile of that shape layer, and then just turn the roundness down. And I'm going to need to do this for both of them. In fact, I'm just going to link the roundness of the second one to the first one just by using the property pick whip. So now those 2 numbers will always be the same. So there we go. I've made that curve smaller. I'll make a 2 view so that I can see both at the same time. And then as I modify this, you can see how it makes that transition look differently. It's very fast to render, really easy to modify, and probably a better solution than what I had done originally. But there's 2 different approaches to making a cyc wall inside of After Effects.